I don't focus on the home right away. They always give me, and we all know this, they always have a level base of what they want. I focus on them as a person and what they love and what they don't love and lifestyle. And then, right, your day-to-day life is just as important as the house. Yes, the house is important, but sometimes you can change layouts. Some things you can't change. But, I think that's just getting to know them on a human level. I mean, and then right off the rip, they know, like with the experience, they can tell, what you're talking about, the market. So I think it takes less conversations if you're really good and you have the skill set. But I just focus on them.
Welcome back to the Real Estate Excellence Podcast. Today, I have one of the most successful real estate agents in Saint Augustine, Florida. She was recently recognized as a Jack's Real Producers for 2023. For her overall production, she is consistently a top producer at the #1 brokerage in Northeast Florida, the DJ and Lindsay Real Estate. So let's welcome the amazing real estate agent, Caitlin Daugherty, to the show. Caitlin, welcome.
Wow. Hi. That's awesome.
If I had your full LinkedIn, I might have had a longer intro there. But.
No, that's okay. I'll take it. I'm like, wow, those are those stats, huh?
I'm glad we finally got you on.
I know. I feel bad.
Yeah.
Right? How many times? For about a year.
About every time that you went on Instagram and had something to say that was a little stirring it up a little bit.
Well, I always feel like I'm riding under the radar. I'm like that secret agent because I don't care to do too much on social media,
Right.
which I'm happy to be here. So I feel like I should do that more. The big coaches like Tom Ferry and all of them say never be a secret agent.
Because you guys do follow Tom, just to kind of put that at the beginning of the show. What's Tom saying right now as far, with the current market conditions that we have? I think everyone's still on shaky ground. Obviously, interest rates are, not the highest they've been in the last 6 months, but they're close.
Yeah.
What kind of advice is he giving you and, passing down to your leadership to, tell all the agents at DJ and Lindsay, what should be your mindset right now?
Classes. I think the mindset and maybe the elevator pitch or the coaching, the training, I think it always goes back to the one-on-ones, the basics. Everything that's going on with the DOJ and, NAR is really to give the customer the best service, right? I mean, there's other words that they put it in, but really knowing your market and the data and educating your client. And I think it just comes back to different trainings on how to do so. But if you love your craft, some things are going to be like, ooh, that's a nugget. I can use that. But I think it really just comes down to that more than ever. I feel like you have to be a skilled agent. The COVID rush is gone. I've been doing this almost 10 years. As you know, I relocated to this area. So I think that's just really what I've always had with just making it humanized business.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with the NAR lawsuit situation. Actually, I'm going to have a show and bring on a couple of attorneys and a very outspoken agent who I know is deep into it to really get out there.
Nice.
I said continuously share. Agents need to be cool, but exactly what you're saying. Even loan officers, we need to be better at explaining what's below the surface that we do and the value that we bring.
I just feel like weren't you already supposed to be doing that?
Exactly.
Like you're supposed to have buyer disclosures, disclosing what you're making. You're supposed to disclose. I think if you don't, you're assumed to be a transactional broker, which you should always. I just feel like that's the best thing for your client is to, just to do good by everyone.
Well, that the whole 2020-21, the speed of business. Right. It was going so fast. I think, it was like, who can get the sign in the yard fastest? They really, some of them were, I'm sure, we know are still doing it, whether they were discounting their commission just to get the deal, get the sign in the dirt.
Yeah,
and
maybe not
get the
disclosing
deal.
That they're on both sides of it or whatever it may have been.
Yeah.
And
they didn't spend that few minutes in explaining all the different things. Are we going to take professional photos? Are we going to do video? All those things that...
Coming soon, but you went under contract before it was supposed to, actually on the market.
Yeah, you didn't even have to do a video because it was already... Yeah. You already had customers that were already waiting for a house like that.
I haven't had any of those problems, but I think it just, educating your client, disclosing all known facts, really just being great communication's key. So if you're not doing that.
So let's get to know you a little bit. You had on Fort Pierce, St. Lucie areas where you grew up.
Yes, I grew up in Port St. Lucie, and then I lived in downtown Fort Pierce for about 10 years before we relocated here.
Okay. So what was, young Caitlin, 18 years old, what are you thinking about? Like, was real estate even like that? Because I asked that question because I think it's funny because although we have some really successful sub 30-year-old agents, and some I've had agents that actually got licensed while they were in college or whatever.
Yeah.
Most people aren't even thinking of that as a career at that age.
Yeah, I wasn't. To be honest, my background comes from the hospitality business. When I met my husband, we were pretty young and we had bars and restaurants. Mm-hmm. We had 3 together. I mean, I helped him run them, but essentially he was already doing that for like 15 years. So it was funny because you're dealing with all these different personality types. And somebody said to me, you would be a fantastic real estate agent. And I had never really looked into it. And then we were looking to change our lifestyle. When we got married and had our son, prior to having our son, we were kind of like life by design, right? Like planning the future. And I was like, I'm going to get into real estate. And that was it. And just here I am,
So approximately how many years did you spend in that restaurant business? Because that's not an easy business.
No. Talk about hard work. That's why real estate to me was... easy peasy, right? It's not easy peasy, but running a restaurant and a bar, not just working at it, running one, very difficult hours and 24/7. But we did that for about 8-9 years. Mm-hmm. So, and then I was in real estate about 5-6 years before we moved here. And I was always with Keller down south with Charles Posas and Michael Brew was my broker down there. Loved them to death, but when I relocated here, obviously they weren't, in this market.
You mentioned pre-show. So if you mentioned the name, I couldn't remember. You said so. You ran into someone and said, "Oh, you ought to be good. You would be good in real estate," because I saw you in the restaurant.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of great agents that we've had on. I mean, you mentioned. Well, you didn't mention one of our Keller Williams teammates, Cece Underwood. She came from Howard with Roundtable. He's very proud to still have in his LinkedIn his restaurant background before getting in here.
I didn't even know that about them. That's awesome.
But that service oriented. What are some of the things that you learned through trial and error, however you learn, but that you even you're utilizing today? It's just a mindset and just normal in your routine and working with clients.
I think it comes down to service over sales. That's what it comes down to. I mean, same thing in that business, right? They pay at the end, right?
Yeah.
So if you
That's
don't...
true. I never thought about that.
If you're not serving the client at the highest level, you're not giving them that white glove service, whatever it might have been. I mean, we didn't have white glove service, Restaurants, we were more of bars and restaurants and sports, But I think that's where it comes from, is just always making sure the client's happy and they had a great experience. And then at the end, right, you reap those rewards based on the service that you give. I've never been a W-2 person.
Right.
So.
Yes, to do the best you can, no matter how difficult the situation is.
Yeah, some of
food comes out cold or whatever.
Yeah. You always just make it right. You problem solve. Right. You take accountability and you get done whatever you need to.
And sometimes the reward isn't instantaneous. I mean, in the restaurant business, you hope that, they go and, they maybe give a little extra on the tip or, give the going rate for a tip to say it was good versus obviously shorting you on the tip.
Yeah.
But sometimes in real estate, you're getting that commission, but really, would you say your bonus is like getting that referral or a 5-star review or something that may come later?
Yeah. I mean, to me, obviously we need to get paid. Sometimes my biggest wins are not when we close. Mm-hmm. It's the feedback during the process. It's the finding that perfect home. It's, I love the nurture game. I love when my clients are 6 months out to a year. It's just such a I like the process and going through and making sure everything's just perfect for them. I mean, don't get me wrong, quick closings are nice, but I just feel like nothing good comes easy, Kind of goes back to that. So, I mean, to circle back, I think it just comes down to, customer service. And
we were talking a little bit about, in 2020, 21, it was so fast, right? And some of these agents came in 2019 or in the middle of 2020 and everything's going so fast. And obviously now it's slowed down where, you've learned in your discipline of the restaurant business, you actually enjoy the long game.
Yeah, I didn't enjoy that market whatsoever. It gave me anxiety. I would lose sleep at night. Like, is everything perfect? We had to make moves so quick.
Right.
Actually, my sales, I think I did better after. Like, I had just started with DJ and Lindsay, I think in 2021. Mm-hmm. I was transitioning. I was still in 2020. It was like 6 months in. I was with Keller. I was finishing up my business down there. And then I believe I was with Endless Summer for about 6 months or so. And then I went to DJ and Lindsay at 2021 because I just had this feeling that the market, everyone was saying, oh, COVID. I was actually using COVID in the very beginning to negotiate lower prices and all the closing costs for my buyers. And then it was like this weird thing that just transpired.
Right.
But actually, I think my sales were more in 2022 and 2023 than in 2021.
Yeah. So we talked about the early jobs. Who introduces you to real estate? As a friend? How do you when do you start thinking about jumping out of the restaurant business? When does it start to come on?
So, a good friend of mine that was also that worked with us, and she moved to Tampa, she got licensed, and she was one of the people that were like, you should be a real estate agent. You'd be perfect for this. And I would say the main person that really got me into it, of course, was my husband, but our good friend, Chris Booza, and now he's a big time DJ in Vegas and he travels all over. But I remember getting licensed and calling him and saying, like, where are you at? Where are you hanging your license? What should I do? Mm-hmm. And at the time, Keller Williams formula was perfect for me, and he was a Keller agent. He was actually under a downline of an agent in Jacksonville here that was also a DJ. I don't know if he's still in the business. This was a while ago. But he was the person that kind of was like, yeah, no, you just need to jump into it.
Right.
So that's kind of who got me into it. And then from there, I would say it was definitely
Now, were they with Keller themselves?
They were. And
okay.
He was in South Florida at that time. He was like more West Palm Beach, Miami. And I was doing the Treasure Coast. So that's like Stewart, Jensen Beach, Port St. Lucie, Palm City, Fort Pierce.
So did you even entertain other brokers?
I did. I interviewed with quite a few. I realized at that time with formulas and things were different. And it's kind of still the same, but you should interview around because I really truly believe in different stages of your life as an agent, different formulas might fit for that lifestyle that you want at that time.
Right.
So I did.
Or your skill level.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I did. I interviewed with Paradise, Coldwell Banker, and Fort Pierce, sweethearts, but I just felt like there wasn't enough energy in that office at the time, and the office that I hung my license at, it wasn't too good to be true. It was perfect.
Right.
It was everything I was looking for. Ton of energy.
Did you have these people that recommended were agents, did they give you some advice, the questions you should be asking or the things you should be looking for when you're going and looking at these brokers, or you just kind of walk in and just have a conversation?
I think it came down to training and splits, right? I had at that time my own sphere from being in the bar business, like 8 years. So I knew everybody in town. I grew up there. But it was more so, it wasn't too much on splits because I feel like, the training is more important and what you're getting and learning out of the office. So that's why, I went to that particular market center.
Well, and kind of jumping forward a little bit, the way DJ and Lindsay run their program.
Yeah.
Having started my career at Quicken Loans, volume is what a call center does.
Yeah.
And DJ and Lindsay are focused on volume.
Yeah.
So that means they have to provide so much of whether it's the leads, obviously the training, it's a different structure or very disciplined structure, which is not for everybody.
I would say that was the one thing that I learned was to be a lot more disciplined. And I'm still learning my time management, right? No one's perfect. I always joke around and say like, I'm a speller, not a seller. Gary Vee has that saying. I'm not the admin assistant type, but it's funny because you said call center and a lot of people think of them as a call center, but it's just because they have so much business going on that all of those agents are always on the phone.
Right.
It's not that they're like randomly just calling people. It's just that's, you have so much opportunity. You need to be talking on the phone. I mean, in your business, you're communicating over the phone.
Yeah,
So, I mean,
yeah.
as an agent, you know.
If not through instant message, if
I
not
just
through...
can't stand the text messaging, though. I feel, and I am like a voice to texter, so sorry to anyone. I always have typos, always, but I love a good phone call. I feel like just the communication's key, and texting, I can't
Right.
stand when agents try to text through a whole deal.
So as a new agent at Keller Williams, which Keller's there, I think there's different brokerages, like you said, there's 4 different
Yeah, it was a franchise
times,
owner.
and Keller really focuses on a lot of the new people coming in, and like you said, training was part of it. But dig a little deeper into training for me, because if I ask a lot of, hey, why do you like XYZ broker or whatever?
Yeah.
There's going to be answers of technology
Yep.
and training. Mm-hmm. But really, what you've learned over the last 9 or 10 years of being in the business, define training for you and what moves the needle.
So it wasn't just Keller, right? It was the people that owned it. I love Charles Poses to this day. He was a real estate attorney, really more of a commercial developer that would buy out, right, the buildings. Like he would drop $2 million here over in Vero Beach, buy that one, and he would put his brokerage. And he had other brokers, not just Keller's. I think he had a couple Christie's down south. But I loved the training because he was so involved with his agents. So even though he owned and ran 6 Keller Williams in that area, he was teaching the classes, the new contracts. So we were learning from attorneys. That's how I started my career. Those contracts that we were learning were from attorneys. The title company was right in the office. They were always available. We had a loan officer it was a 14,000 square foot building. Right. And, the agents that were in there were all very successful. We were all helping each other, but it was him. And then Michael Brew, he was a beast, would fight for his agents no matter what. I think it was, yes, at that time it was Keller and they had a great formula for me, but it was them, that the
Being very
franchise
engaged.
owners,
Right.
and what they provided within their Keller that made it what it was.
It sounds like they were just so engaged. They loved what they were doing, loved providing. And whether they were actually doing their own deals, they were involved in the deals to know what the deals that were going on to stay relevant.
Yeah. I mean, we had a compliance department.
Yeah.
It's funny because, the team that we're on, we have a compliance department. Like every contract is reviewed before it goes out.
Right.
And, maybe not so much, you were more of on your own with that formula at Keller, but before you got closed, before you would get paid, or if you wanted a DA, we had Jim, and he's still with them. And from my understanding, and that was compliance, looking over your files, making sure everything was completed, perfect paperwork. Because again, he was an attorney that owned it, and he wanted his agents to be top notch and to avoid any E&O issues.
And he didn't just tell you, don't worry about it. He actually taught you, but
had
also we're still double checking.
Yeah, we probably had we had probably a 2,000 square foot conference room for our trainings with a huge projection.
Right.
We'd go over the contract, and then an attorney going over all the changes, and then there was probably 20 or 30 of us that would come to each, training.
Right.
There.
Well, how important was it? Because I think that brings the relevancy of if someone's listening right now, of what brokerage you should choose. It sounds like where you're at now and where you started, the leadership was very engaged and hands-on in what was going on. Because I think over time people go from one brokerage to another because the value kind of runs out.
Yeah, or maybe it's just that they're at a certain point in their career where their formula needs to change.
Right.
You can't expect the brokerage to change their formula. Every brokerage has a great formula for what they see fit. And I think that sometimes people hop around because they're trying to feel out what formula works for them.
Yeah.
And maybe they don't know to look into what that formula may be. But it was them that made it. I mean, it was don't get me wrong, the formula was fantastic, but I was so spoiled working for them.
Right.
Like I was so loyal. I mean, I loved that brokerage. I wasn't going anywhere. I was there for 6 years.
Right.
Started there, never left. I was top ALC member. I ran part of the YPN for Board of Realtors in Port St. Lucie. I just loved working there. It was so good. It was so great. It was them and they were all in, they were, you called Brew, he answered. Anything you needed, he was there. And they weren't
They
competing.
love. Sounds like a place where everyone just loved what they were doing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They still do.
That's why they were so
I still talk to those agents down south. We were like a little family,
Right.
But I just wanted to get out of the Treasure Coast, so that's why I relocated to Saint Augustine. But obviously, I was looking for that energy, and that's why I went with DJ and Lindsay, because at that time and right now, it's just the energy that I was looking for. Because if you don't have that in the office, real estate's very hard. Mm-hmm. We're rejected 24/7 out there. Other agents aren't always so nice. So I think that having that energy really affects your mindset from day to day and how you do your business.
How did DJ and Lindsay, because you came into town, went with another brokerage, were there for a little bit, but then started.
I never interviewed with them in the beginning.
Right. You felt out what was going on, or
I
saw what
loved
was going on.
Belinda, and I still talk to Belinda because we had family friends, but it was actually another Keller Williams agent that Laura I still talk to this day, and she knew them. And I was like, you know what? I'm thinking, I gotta change something up. I need something, I need like that energy. It was just when COVID was happening. And Belinda, she's a powerhouse. She's doing her own thing though. She's focused on her own business. I can't expect her to take away from her business to do that with me.
Well, she's if Belinda, right? She's
been
like
20 years deep. She's a goat. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, she's got a lot of family and
I still talk to her this day. I mean, most agents, when they interview around, right, they might be sneaky about it. We're still on good terms. I told her, I was like, hey, listen, I'm looking for something. And, we had a deep convo about it. But long story short, she was like, well, go ahead, interview. And you tell me when you're ready to change over your license. It wasn't like this. I've never had like a bad disconnect from anywhere that I ever worked.
Right.
It was funny because when I left and was moving here, Charles was like, man, I really feel like I missed out. I think he wanted me to be a team leader at one of the offices. Mm-hmm. And he was like, I really wish you wouldn't move. And I was like, well, it's time for a new chapter. But,
well, go back to what you said. You have to find that home that you can thrive in.
Yeah.
And whether it's the synergy of the office or whatever.
I knew real estate. I didn't know the area, right? So I needed other agents that were in there that I could learn from. Maybe regardless of how much experience you have, but if you don't know the area and you don't know all the little great things, like, the word that everyone uses for St. Augustine Beach is in the Golden Triangle. Those little things are valuable, to learn, really understand the lay of the land. So that's what I was looking for. It was like agents that were in the office talking. You could pick up on things because I needed to understand the area and have opportunity. I already knew how to delegate and knew my contracts and know real estate.
Right.
Yeah.
What have you learned about I imagine, Fort Pierce and St. Lucie, that area has its uniqueness.
Yeah.
What have you found out about St.
Augustine?
Because you said it numerous times.
Yeah.
I didn't know the area. Well, you know the area now.
Man, I can't tell you
what is it that you love to share?
Frame construction. Oh my gosh. Coming from it's not really South Florida, but building codes are different here than it is. The subtropics start in Vero Beach, right? If you know Florida, if you really know your coast.
Fort Myers across the Vero Beach. That's the
so
one. Yeah.
When I came here and I was looking for homes, actually Belinda was my agent because I'm all about using an expert. So I wasn't going to represent myself. I didn't know the area. So when the subfloors came up, like subfloors in Florida, what? Frame construction, what? Everything's concrete block and slabs. It's very few far between of frames. That was the disconnect. I was like, oh my God, frame in Florida, but it's just the building codes here. Right. It's okay. It's not a big deal. But anytime I'm talking to clients that are relocating here, they'll say like, I only want CBS homes. I'm like, then there's very few far between. Palm Coast really only has, it's funny because Palm Coast reminds me of Port St. Lucie like 20 years ago. Same construction, same look. Some of the streets, even the way they word them. It's like, it's kind of creepy.
Might have been a similar developer.
Yeah, sometimes I'm like, where am I? Am I back home?
Well, I wasn't leading to the construction, although that was interesting. I was leading about the area itself.
Oh,
so what do you find?
I'm biased. I love St. Augustine. I mean, you feel like
what do
you're
you
in
share
a
with
totally
your
different...
clients? What are some of the things that maybe they don't even know?
I just feel like it's maybe not a hidden gem anymore. But my husband is from St. Augustine.
Okay.
So growing up, we always head south when we went on vacation. And when we'd go to the mountains, I'd always pass St. Augustine. I was like, oh, he's like, I'm going to take you to St. Augustine one day. But when I take you, you're going to fall in love and not want to go back.
Right.
Because when we lived in Fort Pierce, we lived in Eggertown. It was a historical neighborhood. And I love history. And I love anything historical. And I love the older homes and the Victorian style and just anything history related. So that was what, for me, Saint Augustine was that like charming downtown, historic streets and just the culture, the food,
So the clients you have coming in, because you two have your past clients, but also you're taking on, online leads and so forth.
For sure.
people
Everybody
from
that's
everywhere.
moving here
Right.
they're mostly locals aren't buying and selling right now. It doesn't make sense for them.
Right.
Sometimes I even talk them out of it. You'd be surprised. Most agents are probably like, yeah, I want a listing. I'm like, well, if you're going to stay local, what's the point? That's not in your best interest.
Right.
But everyone that is relocating here, especially to afford these price points, they're from other states, and then anybody that's selling typically has to relocate for a reason,
What are you finding is kind of, if you were to narrow a couple things down, as like their major wants and why are they coming to St. Augustine
I think
or
it's
St. John's County in general?
school district, right? Culture. I find a lot of people that are like, South Florida is way too hot now. Like, I want to golf in December and it not be like 80 degrees, 90 degrees. I find that they don't want to, the one thing that St. Augustine has a bad rap for, and it's only in certain particular areas, is the flooding. That's the one thing that I find. They're like, I don't want to be in a flood zone. I'm like, all right, I gotcha.
Right.
Not to bore you. I mean, we all know.
Well, we could talk about it. We can get to the subject of insurance.
Get to the juicy stuff.
We'll narrow down to that in a moment. But so I'm sure you get asked all the time. I see your social media and some of your friends. What advice would you give if we have a new agent, maybe he's in training right now for their license or whatever? What are a couple of things that you would give them advice on with the current market and coming into this business when a lot of people are getting out, both loan officers and real estate agents?
Yeah, I've been hearing that a lot of people getting out. I just don't. I told you, I'm laser focused. I have my head down. I'm really not paying attention to everybody.
Right.
But I guess the stats with the 8% interest rates last quarter was really tough. So, you really don't make your own schedule. You do, but you don't, right? So my main advice would be that it is not selling sunset, and it's extremely tough. You have to have that mental stamina. I would say just prepare to work your butt off for the first 6 months and don't expect anything out of it.
Right.
You have to put the time in, just like with surveying or the real estate, the transaction, in the loaning business, you get paid at the end. So it's kind of like in real estate, you're just figuring everything out. You have to assume that you have to put up the upfront work before you see rewards. So I would say have some savings, right? Don't stress yourself out. Don't get down. We all have our Sunday scaries or our little, temporary cries in the shower. Let's be human, right? We all have them.
Right.
But know that it's worth it if you love serving your client at a high level. But if you don't love this business, then you won't make it. And I think that's the turnover rate. I think it comes down to they want instant gratification. We live in like an instant gratification world. And that's what I see some of the younger agents getting into it, because it's like Uber Eats, anything you want, instant. And it's
Right.
it's a complete 180 of that.
What would you go deep, and I'm listening to you, and you
Sorry if I go way too deep.
because I'm going deeper with my question. My next question, when it comes to the search, because where you're at is not for everyone. I think Keller Williams could be for most people.
Yeah.
So when they're asking you in detail, because DJ, you go to work.
Yeah.
I've had Brittany on. She told me how, what
That's funny, I didn't watch it.
expectations, what expectations that she has as the broker, to explaining things. I know things have changed since I had her on a little bit.
I think that there's a big disconnect. I feel like if you're a top agent, you can't tell me that you're not working those same hours, regardless of what brokerage you're at.
No, I think it's actually, from my side, I think it's actually the structure.
Yeah.
The people, they want to get in the business, like you say, that it's not
want their
selling
cake and eat it
sunset.
too?
Yeah, they want to, well, I'll go to work when I, hey, 9, 10 o'clock. Okay, I guess I got to go, make some phone calls.
Even
or something.
Keller says you got to prospect from 9 to 11.
Yeah.
Right? You got to have some type of schedule, because I'm guilty of this. If you don't time block, real estate is wild. Random things come up. So if you don't have some type of structure, then it's just so discombobulated. You're all over the place, and it makes it more stressful. And
Right.
you don't have that time with family or that time to decompress at night. unless
Well, I
it's
think
on
the
fire.
structure of you setting your appointment. I mean, I think if you
Time
talk
blocking.
to any of the top agents that I've had on, the time blocking is crucial. And
Yes.
and even if it's you're going to go get a massage.
Yeah.
Because you
Sometimes
need
I'm
stress
hanging
relief.
out with family, and if a client calls me, hey, I'm in an appointment. Sorry.
Yeah.
And they're probably going to see. But if I don't, they don't care, right? They
Right.
don't care if you're eating dinner. They don't care if you're at the doctor's appointment. The client is buying their biggest investment, and their needs come before yours. Unfortunately, right. I mean, I don't mean to sound harsh, but
well, is it I think they do care.
They do,
but you got to tell them that
don't.
hey, I'm with a client right now. I'll probably be finished within the
I
hour,
always
and I'll
do
call
that.
you back. They'll accept that.
Oh, of course,
Yeah,
of course.
yeah.
I had a seller, we're about to put a waterfront listing on, and I said, hey, listen, I'm running to appointment, but I'm going to get back with you end of business day, and we'll figure out a time for tomorrow for me to preview to make sure we don't need to stage anything.
Right.
I was on another call with Grant and Sonia, referral from an agent in Orlando. Hey guys, I'm running into a 1:00, but I'll recap with you after, I get out of this appointment. I don't tell them necessarily what the appointment is for, but it is an appointment. So,
right.
They understand. And I think they respect you more if you're like, hey, listen, I'm running into appointments, or I have this, but you're a high priority to me. So as soon as I'm done with this, then I will get back to you at your earliest convenience. I mean, as long as you do what you say you're going to do, but anybody that's producing a lot, you're not just randomly always available 24/7 either.
Exactly. I've said this on the show before. That's one thing at Quicken Loans is when a customer calls, let it go to voicemail, and then because we're sitting in cubes,
Yeah,
and then take a few minutes, then call them back. But if you are always accessible,
you're trading your client.
They're going to run over you.
You can't say like, I took your call at 10:00 this night when we first got started, but now I can't take your call while we're under contract.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Right.
The client's going to say, oh, it's good enough before we were under contract. So I try to make that, unless something's on fire and it can be problem solved tonight, which
Right.
is not usually the case in real estate with contracts.
Yeah.
If you're under contract, it can wait till the next morning. Well, I start my day at like 7:38, my son's getting up, we're doing what we need to do, get him to school, and then I'm on my way to work.
Yeah.
Try to get there before 9. Typically, I'm always at the office by 9, but I like my mornings too. You know what I mean? But I'm always available. Like I was talking to a seller today at like 7:30 this morning.
Yeah.
I might not have been at the office, but we were texting
and
calling and talking about problem solving.
Yeah, I think we all get that we have to be, and we want to be reachable. But like I said, I think they respect because the fact if you were with them or the 1:00 was with them, you'd be telling that person that you're going to call them later because you're going to be with them and you're focused on them at that time. And I think there's a mutual respect with that. What have you learned about yourself over the last 9 years? Deep question here.
I'm a procrastinator. I can't help it. It's deep. It's like, I don't know if it goes with my personality type. I'm getting better about not doing that. I work really good when the pressure's on for last minute. Like sometimes if I have too much time, I'm not as efficient. But I've really learned about myself, and it comes down to having structure when you were younger. Because I might have not had structure, being in the bar and restaurant. We just work 24/7, right? We're sleeping and we're working. We're sleeping. I didn't have a child back then either. So it is not procrastinating and time blocking. That is what I've learned about myself. And I'm still working on, I think some things are just personality traits. It's not that I'm procrastinating because I don't want to get that done. It's just what I find is a priority at that time. And I like to get that handled if it's not within those time block scenarios.
I know DJ and Lindsay's pouring into you. Like I said, they're big Tom Ferry followers, and you guys are you've got their access to their coaching and so forth. Yeah. What is some different advice that they're giving you that you're kind of working on, like the time blocking? What are some things that you're trying to improve in some areas?
I always worked my own sphere before, and then relocating here to a new town, that's so unrealistic. And I don't want to meet people and then be like, do you want to buy real estate with me? Like, I want to make genuine relationships. Right. I've had people that like, hey, I know you're really good at what you do, so I want to use you. And that's the biggest compliment. But to answer your question, not to go down a rabbit hole, what I've learned with them truly is having you can't do a high volume and scale without having that time block and that time management. And I'm not perfect at it. You call Brittany right now, I probably don't have it all together, but
you're always pushing
the
envelope.
Trying.
It's because you're pushing the
envelope.
envelope.
Accountable though.
Yeah.
I'll tell her, be like, hey, I got this to do. I got this to do. I didn't get this done, but I'm going to get this done. She's like, I know you will. Don't worry about it. But I think it comes down to really organizing your day and using the systems. I've always been a pad and paper kind of gal, and I still am. But before, I just worked on everything organically. But I was only doing like 6 to 7 million. And this was when the price points were like 200,000 in South Florida. Like my best year was like over 6 million, but it was all personal business. But with them, when you're scaling and you're doing 15, 20 million a year, and most of their agents are doing at least over 10 million, and you should be with that much opportunity. But I think if you don't time block and you don't keep things organized, you are not you are going to hit a wall. You're going to be stressed out. But that's the one thing I really learned with them is being uber disciplined with time, and I'm still working on it. But we're not, we're human. So
a lot of agents, one of the challenges that is, because they reach a lid, there comes whether
we all have that. You got to break through that ceiling.
Yeah, break through that ceiling. So when looking at the different brokerages, or what does DJ and Lindsay do to help? Because if all their agents are doing the volume numbers that they're doing, or and really whether you're doing $1 million transaction or a $400,000 transaction, it's still the same amount of time.
I think the great thing is that they don't really cherry pick, right? So you could be on shift and get a $4 million lead. I will say some of the newer agents, not that I haven't gone to Brittany or Brett or any of the mentors for help, I have, but I already know what to do in a lot of those scenarios. I'm not the person that needs them as much on the phone. When I only call Brittany just to double check myself to make sure if there's a problem that she's aware of it as my broker, as respect to her. So she's aware if something were to come up. But I would say they work an incredibly amount of long hours, those mentors, and those new agents, have access to them. And that's the one thing that I remember about Brew. It was a little bit different, but Brew was always available. Michael Brew, my old broker. And you could call him, if he knew you were no BS and you were doing your job, no matter what, he's picking up the phone, he's helping you. But I would say that's probably something that they have there for those new agents is they're throwing them out there. There's still training that they get before they're out there, taking on those clients. They have to do a lot of training before they get on the phones or opportunities.
Right.
But I think it's that, if they need something, it's there. There's so many different departments. There's so many new other agents that are willing to help. That's what I think that they have is that training.
For you to be focused on your income producing activities, when you get to a certain volume, you have to make a shift. Someone has to start picking up, we'll call them administrative tasks for lack of better description. Yes. At what point did you receive that? And then obviously understand that. Because I think a lot of people don't totally understand that, someone else can actually do that.
I know. I was that person, control freak, wouldn't let anybody do anything for me. Because again, when I was doing that volume personal down south, I didn't have a transaction coordinator. I literally was OCD. I did all my own paperwork. We still write our own offers, but then we have a transaction coordinator, which I love. They're more like Emily. She's my go-to TC. She's more of like my assistant. She's not full assistant, but I've seen other agents that have a transaction coordinator, and I've used some down south, but they are just coordinating the transaction, sending out emails. They don't do paperwork for you. They don't call anybody. They don't write up addendums, whatever it may be. So she's kind of like an assistant, for my paperwork.
Well, how's that moved your business?
Oh, incredibly. I mean, there's no way that I could do it without her. I mean, sometimes when we have big closings, I'll treat her to a spa day because I'm like, oh, there's no way I would get that done without her, like a transaction coordinator. There's no way I'm at showings, and if you have 10 or 8 pending and addendums and I'm answering the phone, I'm still very hands-on with my clients. Right. Like that's one thing, the old school approach that I do have. Like I'll let her handle some things, but if it comes to negotiations or anything to do with the other agent, I'm taking that on. Certain deals, if I feel like it's not complex, she'll answer and do things for me, but for the most part.
Well, even just to keep tabs on the simplest things of the process, like when the appraiser is going to show, when you getting the inspector out there, you start, like you said, you got 8 deals in process.
If you're really giving the client the best service, you have to have a transaction coordinator / assistant.
Yeah.
You know, the next thing for me is to break through. I think I've hit a ceiling with the company of my volume. You know, of course, I could probably tweak in and get my time management perfect and go to bed every night at like 9 p.m. and wake up earlier. But, you know, we all have our guilty pleasures too, right? So we're human. But I think the next thing for me is I'm really bad at like admin tasks. Mm-hmm. And I really need to get back to doing more social media, like not being a secret agent. I just didn't care to do it. You know what I mean? Like I was just so focused on the client. I don't care about going online. But I think that's my next step is having an assistant. I really need an assistant.
In discovering that, I mean, because like I said, you were at Keller Williams, who provided for years, who provides a great deal of training, going to events and so forth. DJ and they're the Tom Ferry is very well respected. To find and come to realization that is your, I don't want to say Achilles heel or weakness or whatever it is, you don't like to do it. There's other things you like to do better. And you can 10x that.
Yeah. I just feel like, like if you're going to advertise or paperwork or, admin stuff, that's not my thing. And there's some people that strive in that for their personality type.
Yep.
Strive in it. I'm left-handed though. I'm creative. I'm a talker. We joke around. I tell Emily this. She says, I don't want to be out there in the field. So she likes that. She likes the transaction. She likes the paperwork. So that's my thing. I'm a 180. I'm great at paperwork, but not if you're doing 8 to 10 deals and you have 5 listings, or 10 listings.
Right.
You can't have like 20 deals going on. And
to brag a little bit on DJ and Lindsay and Brittany and Brett obviously are in the office as the broker. And I don't know what's Brett's title. I
think they're mentors.
He's our management. So
I call them the everything. I don't know if they have a title. They're just literally everything. They're doing all the things.
Well, to be engaged like they are in everything, because they're trying to obviously bring everyone to their highest level.
Yeah.
They're constantly evaluating and your weakness or what you like to do is different than another person. Like I said, you like to talk. You may love to sit there and build relationships on the phone or meet people for happy hour or cup of coffee in the morning or whatever.
I'm not a happy hour type.
Right. But there's things that you like to do in the thing. How is they, I guess they're juggling a bunch of plates.
Oh man, they're
all the time because there's different personality. Every plate's spinning at a different level.
They do it.
How if someone's looking at DJ and Lindsay, as I said, there's an opportunity to brag on them a little bit.
Yeah.
It's the organization, the work that Brett and Brittany put in to try to maximize everybody's spin.
They do it because they love it. There's no other reason for it. Mm-hmm. Nobody puts that much in because they're not uber competitive and just so passionate. I mean, I say sometimes people will laugh at this, but owning a brokerage and running one is like corralling, stray cats. Yeah. What are they doing out there on the streets? I can't give them enough credit. I wouldn't be able to do what they do.
Right.
They give it their all. That's their baby. Brett, geez, he's got a family, he's got kids. I mean, he's a superstar. Mm. I think that the passion I have for my clients is probably how they do it is the passion that they have to win and do that for their agents. Mm-hmm. That's the only way I can really think of it. You have to have like an earning, you have to have a passion for that. Yeah.
What do you think is because it, again, going back to my talk with Brittany, so I'm evolving this question from what she told me, the structure and so forth. If there was one thing that they do that really just has really made your last 2 or 3 years you've been there, what is it do you think is that they're doing is really the thing that really moved your business? Because you brought talent in, you had experience, so there's some level of training, the contract, like you said,
there's always more to learn as things
but
evolve.
your business has grown.
Yeah, for sure.
Exponentially.
I think I did $2 million my first year when I first came to Saint Augustine, personal business. And then when I started with them, I did 15 million, I think, my first
So when you were having that conversation with another real estate agent, hey, what are you guys doing over at DJ and Lindsay?
That's the golden key. You got to follow up. You need a good CRM. And I think a lot of agents, they think like, oh, well, if you're not ready to buy in 60 days or less, I'm not going to give
I'll
you the
call
time
you
of
in
day.
59 days. Yeah,
Well, no, I think they don't follow up with the client. I think they just let it go. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think major teams and anybody that I've seen really just doing amazing numbers, their follow up. You got to follow up. Somebody might be nurtured for 6 months. It doesn't mean because they're not ready to buy now, especially luxury clients.
Right.
They're not buying in 60 days. They want to be educated on the area.
Unless you find them that golden gem of a house that just...
Ray and Deb, love them to death. I talked to them for 6 months before I put them under contract. I think we're under, custom building with AR Homes. 6 months of educating them on the area. When they came into town, did a beautiful tour, but they were already educated on the area when they got here.
Right.
They were just community shopping at that point.
Right.
They didn't have to be educated when they got here. I was already 6 months in, talking to them every 2 weeks or so. Hey, what do you guys think about this? Really learning about the client. So I think it's follow-up. I think the agents that are doing the most and really winning at this are following up with their clients and providing more than, hey, just checking in, or how you doing today? Talking about the market, what's going on, finding out what they thought about that last listing, that you sent, or what they liked and what they didn't like, and, just things of that nature.
When you take that client from just someone you don't know, it's not a girlfriend or your mom's sister or whatever. Aunt, I guess that's who mom's sister would be, right? But you take that new client that you've never met before, you just really transacted on the phone, and they're like, okay, now you're engaged, and they're looking to buy. They just got to find the right home. So they're hopefully going to buy in 60 days. You're going to engage. What is your mindset at that point? What's your plan of attack, so to speak?
Strategic.
Building that relationship, and obviously finding out what home do they really want.
I don't focus on the home right away. Mm-hmm. They always give me, and we all know this, they always have a level base of what they want. I focus on them as a person, and what they love and what they don't love, and lifestyle. And then, your day-to-day life is just as important as the house. Yes, the house is important, but sometimes you can change layouts. Some things you can't change. Mm. But, I think that's just getting to know them on a human level. I mean, and then right off the rip, they know, with the experience, they can tell, what you're talking about, the market. Mm-hmm. So I think it takes less conversations if you're really good and you have the skill set. But I just focus on them, I really, truly want to know who they are and what they love and what they don't. I always tell them, be brutally honest with me, because that's something that I can be too much with a filter. In my 9 years, it's what I've learned is just slim it back. Not with clients, but just in general.
Right.
I was probably a lot more ruthless in the beginning of my career. But I think it's really I love helping people in that next chapter. And I feel like a lot of people relocating here, I know how that feels to be the new kid on the block, mm-hmm. right? Moving into an area no one. I know that feeling. And starting over, it's terrifying. Some people love it. Terrifying for me.
Do you like to do it with some initial phone calls, or do you Zoom call them?
Sometimes we do Zoom. Yeah, sometimes we do Zoom. Most of it's over the phone. It's very rare that everyone has time for the right time to Zoom, but there were a couple times, especially with bigger clients, that we're Zooming. Yeah, right. Or interview for listings. I mean, I would prefer the Zoom. But most of it is just if they call and I'm in between windshield time or whatever it is, I was just talking to another client here. Hey, we have some questions. You have a second? Boom, take their call.
Right.
Yeah, I'm typically on the phone a lot.
How do you handle, because on the phone, obviously, you're only talking to one person typically. You're not doing a three-way call, but you got the spouse. How do you... and the spouse, maybe
he's the real MVP. He is everything.
Yeah,
he is.
How do you reach through and
bring
the spouse?
Oh, you're saying the spouse for? Well, I always make sure that
your MVP, your husband.
I thought you were talking about.
No, I'm talking about the spouse over the client, because you're generally only talking to maybe her or maybe him.
Oh, I always like to, when we have deep conversations, happy wife, happy life. Typically, the wife makes the decisions. Let's be real, because they make the home, but not always. I'm not being sexist, but I really find that I like to have conversations. I'm like, hey, Ray and Deb, when are you both going to be at the house together? Or if one of them calls me, and then I make sure to recap with the other spouse. Hey, this is what we talked about. Wanted to get your feedback on that one too. What did you think? Oh, I know Ray loves it, but I don't like that kitchen or those cabinets. I mean, whatever it may be, I try to do that. If you're not talking to both of them, right?
You could be going down a path you don't want to.
Bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially if they're married and buying a house together, you want to make sure that they're both happy. I don't want anyone to have buyer remorse.
Well, not necessarily buyer remorse, but you work so hard to find this home, and you're like, oh my God, this is perfect because she loves it.
Yeah.
And then because you haven't been talking to him, he walks in and
That
says,
never
no way.
happens with me.
Yeah. Because you're working with both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I make sure the communication is there.
Yeah.
Even if I don't get a hold and we're not talking. I mean, I really, like I said, I focus in on them as a human.
Mm-hmm.
I can already pick up what they want before they even know what it is, and I'm hand selecting them and sending it to them. It's very rare that there's a huge disconnect between the husband and wife unless they don't agree on anything, and that happens. But, usually they'll both say, oh, I don't like this, or, but we're looking to look at that point. But for the most part, when I'm sending them something, then I'm like, I think this is what you guys want. Bingo.
How do you dig past because I think we've got these people coming down from up north. I don't want to live in a CDD, or I don't want to live in an HOA, or I don't want this. And then you end up selling them one, I don't want new construction. I want existing, or vice versa. How do you break through and really find out when they have that kind of whatever that is?
That's where the communication comes in.
Yeah.
So everybody has like this imagination or what they think, what. That doesn't mean it exists here, right? The construction or the style of it.
Right.
So everyone, I say, well, what do you imagine that dream home to be, whatever it may be? And then when they start talking about it, well, I'll just really educate them and shoot them straight. Well, that's not going to work because you can't have garden beds in that particular HOA.
Right.
So we're going to have to really focus what we're leaning towards and what we're willing to sacrifice. I mean, that is the one thing with me is I shoot them straight. I never say, oh, okay, well, we'll see. No. I know the market. I know the neighborhoods. Right off the rip, I'm educating them on it. Hey, that exists, or what you're imagining, I don't think really will work. Like that does or doesn't exist here, but this neighborhood has that style or house or that lifestyle you're looking at. So maybe it doesn't have like an acre lot, but it has a half acre of the estate lots on the backside of the neighborhood or whatever it may be.
Well, in
I hope that
in the transition to that, again, go back into that new agent or maybe an agent who's stalled. You just brought up knowing the communities.
I think
and
that's
when
what
people
Tom
are
Ferry
talking
talks
to
about. Your data, know your market. Look at the hot sheet every morning. And I'm guilty, and I don't check the market every morning, and I should, and I'm trying to make a habit of it. But I'm looking every day. So when someone calls or I'm talking to someone, I already know that property.
Right.
Or you're the expert. They're especially with everything that's going on, if buyers agents are going to have to start paying, like you need to be better than just opening a door and writing up a deal.
Right.
You have to educate them.
How much do you think approximately was your new construction to existing last year? Because obviously with a shortage of inventory.
I would say anybody below 500,000 was typically going with new construction.
Yeah.
My average price point last year, I'd have to look back. I really don't until it's the end of the year.
Well,
I don't.
Your client-wise, were you 50-50 or 30-70?
I would say when it came to my first-time home buyers, I was putting them on new construction because at least I knew they had instant equity when they were moving in. Mm-hmm. I knew it wasn't going to be their forever home. And the one thing about Saint Augustine is a lot of older homes and people don't keep up. I mean, they do, but for that price point, I felt like new construction would be better for them.
And then gets them off on a good start.
Yeah, like instead of getting into something it's a 50-year-old house or 20-year-old house and already needs roofs and all kinds of, structural maybe things.
So after the contract, you're engaged. What, obviously we brought up insurance a little while ago, and I've been talking to insurance agents. It's like now it's almost like when you order the inspection, you need to be calling an insurance agent to find out because the insurance costs have gone up so much.
I think you should really already know that when you're taking a buyer to the house, and you're not going to pull permits on every house, right? But for instance, I just feel like, if you're in a flood zone, if that's going to require flood insurance, if you're taking them to a house in the shores of the South, and if it's not a brand new roof, like it's an older home, it might have a higher insurance versus the newer home. I'm not saying that the newer home maybe is built better than the older home. It's just if it doesn't have those things, those upgrades, you have to presume you already have an idea of their holding costs. And I think that comes back to educating the client. Like when they walk through, I'll say, hey, that's going to be a problem on your inspection. This is going to need this, because I used to do flips with investors when I was in Port St. Lucie a lot. A good majority of my business was I worked on an investor's portfolio, and my father was a contractor. My father-in-law's a contractor. I grew up in construction. My poor mother, her house is still not finished. So I have that background. So I'm able to point that out and pick it apart. So while we're looking, I'm also educating on and saying, hey, listen, we're coming in at this price because of that. So during the inspection, we're not nitpicking unless it's something structural or would be an issue for insurance that I can't see.
There was actually a discussion I was having with an agent before you came in. The water heaters, it's an older home, water heaters in the attic. Like that's a no-no for insurance agents right now. And the roof, I'm like, well, you ain't gonna get an offer on that house, because they're gonna pull if they call the insurance agent before going to look at that house, they're gonna say, that roof is 20 years old, and the water heater, we don't know how old it is. They don't know where it's located until they go in there. But when they find it's in the attic, forget it. You don't have insurance.
Well, if you don't see it in the garage,
Well, hopefully it's in a closet somewhere, but
I mean, it should be in the garage.
That's preferred area,
or somewhere in a utility closet on the back side of the house, or you find sometimes the remodels they're in the middle of the house.
I'm into the tankless thing. We're lucky the other way, but
nice
dealing with all that. That is the next juggernaut in the process, right?
Yeah.
The inspection comes back.
Condos are the nightmare right now.
Right.
Budgets and reserves are never enough right now.
Right. And that was kind of my forte in Saint Augustine we were willing to get condos done. A lot of guys avoid them. It's not that, but you're right. It's either a lawsuit or, the financials are important.
Reserves. You have to make sure. And I think when the new insurance, everything that was going on with that, especially in South Florida, I think that a lot of condo associations, a lot of places, they didn't foresee that. That was a new change. So of course there are special assessments or HOAs going up to offset that.
But in your trend, so that the inspection comes back. One, how important is it that you have your go-to inspector, and obviously, hopefully, your customer agrees with you to use that one.
Yeah.
And how you handle, how are you used a phrase, you didn't use the word foreshadow, but basically preparing your customer for that inspection, which they have every little scratch of paint.
We negotiate a lot of that stuff, in the very upfront. Instead of, you do an inspection to make sure stuff that you can't see, but a lot of it's done up front. Like if I know it's an older roof, let's do an escrow holdback.
Right.
Let's come in at a certain price. If the seller's not willing, a lot of sellers are putting on the roof right now or saying we're putting on one, or they've already had one. I think it's catching on now. Like you can't list the house, I think it's 15, right? No matter what.
Yeah, 10 they start to cut back on who's available, what insurance companies will take them.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I would say that typically it's pre-negotiated into the deal before the inspection, or if it comes up and we're like, oh wow, we didn't realize it was that old or whatever it may be. Escrow holdbacks are great.
But did you learn that with your the people who you were hanging with down at Keller Williams? Because I feel. And this may be, I may have the wrong
new thing. I think the escrow holdbacks, I will definitely give DJ and Lindsay credit for that. That's something that we're doing to keep the deals together. And I think a lot of agents might be doing it too.
If they're not aware of it, it's a card that's always been there. I mean, the lender has to get involved, and you're going to hold so much back for that roof, and it's going to be done in so many days. Okay with it. Yeah. Right, type of thing. But the preparing the customer for that, because I think we were talking about Kim Knapp before the show. Kim's like, if there's $1,000 in repairs, I'm going back to the and say, are you really going to walk away for this for $1,000? And
if you are, you're probably not ready for home ownership.
Right. But something that you learn as an agent, because you now have got enough notches on your belt from sales, dealing with inspections that need to be renegotiated and so forth, to really try to nip it in the bud at the front. So the post inspection is just, okay, let's just smooth this out a little bit.
It's got to be a huge deal breaker or something we weren't aware of for my deals. I have like one of the lowest cancellation rates.
Right.
We're not going to write it up if it doesn't make sense, or if we can't negotiate it up front. I'm not trying to have the listing agent and the seller also take
Take
their
it off
house
the
off.
market.
I don't like those
Yeah.
games. Like, I feel like that's your responsibility as a buyer's agent to educate the client, look into it before. Now, as you're looking, right, maybe you're not doing all the homework up front, but when they're starting to narrow it down and like talking about offers, you are doing that homework before you place the offer. So when you're negotiating leverage is, hey, listen, I've already educated my buyer. They're not going to nitpick your place unless there's something major here that's going to affect insurance. We're probably not going to ask for it unless there's something that comes up that we're not aware of. So, make sure your seller's disclosure is correct. Like, I hope you're a great listing agent that, really looked into your listing before you listed it. But some stuff happens, it's real estate. You don't know everything about
Well, you
the
should
house.
be like a lawyer, though. You don't ask a question unless you know what the answer is, right?
You don't.
Is that kind of, when you go in there, you should be, we know this is going to come back on the inspection.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think if they're not comfortable with that, like I said, then they shouldn't be putting in the offer. I don't want them spending $500-600 on an inspection either.
Right.
If we don't, they'd have to foresee some of those things. I think a good buyer's agent is pointing that out.
All right, so we talked about the buyer side. Let's flip over to the listing side.
Yay.
Listers last, right? That's a
listing is existing, they say.
so listings are growing right now. Inventory numbers are growing a little bit because the high interest rates is slowing down the buyers a little bit.
I have saw that. I need to check the new stats, but did you see that? The inventory was up for NEFAR, almost
I
5.6
don't focus
months?
on the exact numbers. Just say it's edging up.
It's definitely there's a lot of inventory.
And talking to different agents. In fact, I was talking, Julie Olmstead down in St. Augustine, and she's getting calls from people who just say they can't afford the house anymore, and their insurance has gone up or whatever, type of thing. And it's
crazy how many people are like, I'm going to sell my house because I don't want to put on a new roof. It's like, you got to put it on the new roof anyways.
Yeah. So, and then we were talking briefly about new construction and all their incentives, which for some reason, I'm on social media because I put out so much social media because of the show, so I'm on it all the time. I haven't seen the builders really advertising the incentives. Now, I imagine they're still there, like they were, say, 6 months ago. I don't know if they just have, hey, we need to slow it down a little bit because I don't think they're giving away a lot of their margin, obviously, with these incentives.
Like they're still giving a good amount of incentives.
I just don't think I felt they weren't advertising as much on social media as they were before.
And here's the thing with me is I'm not really...
You're not studying the social... So, but from a listing side, those are competition because the builder...
for sure.
They're buying the rate down and
I had some
so
listing
forth.
in Nocatee. Woo!
Yeah.
During that 8% market, that last quarter was brutal for anybody that was doing business.
So how are you educating your list when you go in there and you're talking about, okay, we want to list it for X amount of dollars?
Hard conversation.
Are you suggesting that you advertise up front a 2-1 buy down to be competitive, that kind of thing?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, sometimes you're not putting it in the public remarks, but I always call prior to each showing. Again, control issues. I like to make sure that the buyer, maybe they're new, I want to help them, buyer's agent, that they know about the property and the seller, and kind of find out a little bit about their buyer. I try to, talk to them before each showing and show them, hey, I'm really friendly and I'm a team player, so let's try to get a deal done. If you have any questions, I'm here. With that, I always do the research on the new construction in that neighborhood before I take the listing. Some sellers are unrealistic, and I've gotten to that point where I'm not going to take the listing if they are not in the realm of reality of what's going on. You can't buy a house just last year and list it in a neighborhood that's offering the same house, newer. Yeah, and then a crazy amount of incentives, especially in Nocatee right now. Ooh, those builders are ruthless. They're doing all the things. Not in a bad way. I'm just saying.
You said something here, and other agents may do it, but I've never heard them say it as you just said it. The buyer, I imagine there's all these online things that you guys have that, hey, they want to come over house at 2:00, and see it. Okay. But you're calling that buyer's agent and getting a feel for what's going on and maybe telling them some things that are...
Especially while the market's slower right now, right? You have the time to do that. I always did that.
The seller's willing to give some incentives or whatever.
Yeah, I put in the private remarks or I remind them. I mean, we have such long days and crazy things are going on. They might have forgot. I try to hey, on my listing, this is what we got going on. If the seller said that it's okay to disclose this, I'll say, hey, the seller's motivated or they're willing to do closing costs. Tell me a little bit about your buyer. Are they just in the starting phase, or are they, really narrowed down the neighborhood?
Right.
Do you need any more information as far as, parking or whatever it may be? I try to help the buyer's agent. And then during that, selfishly, I get information, right? A little bit about their buyer. So when I'm giving the seller the feedback or those weekly reports or bi-weekly reports, the feedback is there, and if it's not sold yet, they understand the demographics that are looking at their house too, and maybe what those buyers' concern are, where they're coming from, It's time
brilliant.
to build. I really do feel like building deep-rooted connections with other agents, regardless if they're at your brokerage or not, is the key to this too, for some sanity and to do really good deals for all parties, because and not so much deals like in pricing, just like not stressful for the clients when the agents really communicate and they're doing what's best in the client's best interest and the transaction, but they know how we operate. Or the other agent, you've done deals with them before, and I think people might move around to different.
You listen to my show.
I haven't.
You subliminally are.
Okay. I just feel like, don't take that the wrong way, because it took me forever to get on here. I would never make the time to do this. But I just think that you never know, like, who's going to be on the other side of that deal. And, like, people change brokerages. But guess what? If you're really selling real estate, those agents aren't getting out of the market. So regardless of where you hang your hat, your relationship with other agents and how you do business, might make or break how you get deals done.
Was that something that you've learned through trial and error?
Yes, I've always done that. I felt like it was better.
That was just a mindset that you had right away.
Yeah, and I remember when I was new too, there might have been, and I might have picked up on it subconsciously, but sometimes a listing agent would call and say, hey, just wanted to let you know that this is going on, or maybe an update, or they painted one of the rooms, or, just wanted to give you a little insight. And we'd talk about, my buyer's coming from the Northeast or whatever it may be, and we're just starting. So I'll give you feedback, but I want to let you know they're just getting a feel for it. Sometimes people are looking. I try not to do the owner-occupied ones if they're not really serious yet. Not every agent does that, but sometimes if they're really serious, then they're like, well, actually, I'd really love to see that. If you've educated them enough over the phone before they get here, then they know what they're looking at, right?
Well, I'm thinking, if I'm the agent on the other side, you're giving me some behind the scenes information about it when I walk in there to show that house. Yeah, they just painted it, right? Or they painted it 2 weeks ago.
Exactly.
You sound like
I like
on
to
top
keep
of your
them
game.
Fresh. Hey, don't forget you need your driver's license for that gate. It's a nightmare. I hope you didn't leave your wallet at home. Like I call them like an hour before the show or 30 minutes prior. Hey, this is what's going on. There might have been a special assessment. We paid for that. No one knows the house better than the owner. And then a good listing agent, right? The buyer might be showing 5 different properties. So when they go in there, I want to try to help them so they're not looking at the MLS sheet and, trying to answer this as much as I can. They'll walk in there and talk to the listing agent. This is what's going on, and they're relocating, and they're okay with a lease back or whatever it is. Makes them feel better about the showing, and the buyer's more informed. I mean, everybody wins, right? It's all about educating the client.
Well, it goes back to the first thing we talked about, the NAR lawsuit and adding the value. I mean, that's a huge value. And any agent listening, that's a huge tip right there. You may go, oh, wow, that's common sense, but are you doing it?
Yeah.
And the fact that you're doing it on a regular basis, making that buyer's agent look good, but you're also, if a seller's listening to this, and the fact that you're going out and bragging about the house or telling the buyer's agent who's bringing them in, giving him that verbal ammunition,
Full
that
service,
all the
baby.
Little, they got 3 cats or whatever, there's little information or, hey, knowing exactly when the pool was put in or, it just makes them sound good.
Or switch to salt or... I don't know.
But you're selling the house.
Yeah.
You're selling the house.
I think it's just helping out the other agents in your market because there's times that I've had, we're getting back to 5, 6 showings in a row, which you really shouldn't do more than 5 or 6 because it starts to blur. But I have done, 8 or 9 recently in the hammocks. But either way, I think that it really helps when the listing agent calls prior and helps you. And then 2, the other thing that I do for my listings is When I noticed, especially in the last quarter, and a lot of other listing agents thanked me for this, and I think they started maybe incorporating this too. I had a toughie in Nocatee, a listing that wasn't getting any activity, like not a showing for a month at a time. I lose sleep over that. Like,
Right.
I know my sellers are going to be upset. Like, I care about my clients, even if they might be like a nightmare sometimes, but I get it. They're stressed. Sometimes, depending on days on market, I was calling all the other listing agents in that area that had somewhat of a comparable listing. Hey, I'm not trying to like be cutthroat. I just want to see, have you had any showings? Are you getting any feedback? What's the activity been on your listing? What's going on? You know, is your seller able to show within a 24-hour notice or a 2-hour notice? Like, and then we talk, and then we're able to like, again, you know, brainstorm together with other agents in the market. And I had one that was like, wow, that's a great idea. I never thought of calling all the other agents to see what was going on with activity. Because then you go back to the seller and say, hey, not only am I talking to all the buyer's agents, I'm talking to every listing agent in the community too.
Right.
And you get together, maybe do mega open houses, whatever it is. And then everybody's on the same page. Again, another level of educating the client or yourself. And maybe you'll find something that you didn't know that was going on with showings XYZ over here versus here.
Well,
Maybe
at
there's
any
something you could do
one
different.
time in our market, any 1 month or week or whatever, it could be the type of clients. They might be empty nesters, grandma and grandpa, and they want a smaller
Exactly.
home.
Yeah.
And the price point is, you know, $150,000 less, which puts them into a conforming loan with a reasonable down payment versus a jumbo loan. And any of those little things could set you off a period of time.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't getting any showings on that because I knew it was going to be difficult because the primary was not on the ground floor. And a lot of people wanted that separation for the kiddos, you know, the demographics that are buying there. They wanted to have the separation. That was a toughie when you don't have the
I
primary.
don't know why builders in Florida, they got to know the master has to be on the ground floor. It's just standard procedure.
I know. It's,
I don't.
again,
Yeah,
right?
but they don't think about the future sale. They're just looking at today's sale.
I know.
Yeah.
I wish they would really start
And
paying
then your
attention
new
to that.
buyer doesn't necessarily know that either. A good agent's gonna like, okay,
Yeah.
what's you know, are you only gonna be here for a few years because you're in the military and you might get transferred?
Yeah.
In 3 or 4 years. Okay, we're gonna try to resell this in 3 or 4 years, but your master's on the second floor.
Yeah.
This may not be the right one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why go look at it if you know you're not going to, unless everything else is perfect, you know?
Right.
Really getting to know your client again. Really,
100%.
you know your buyers, then you know the market. And as a listing agent, you know your demographics.
But you led into the whole point of the collaboration between the other agents, and again, talking to many of the top producers, whether it's going to socials and just meeting other agents, because you just don't know who's on the other side of that transaction. And, you know, if rates do drop, but, you know, I don't think they're going to drop. Like someone said, oh, they'll be in the fives, you know, here before the fall. I don't really see that. But if it is,
I think that's more 2025, but we'll see.
there's going to be a line. Well, there's going to be a line, and you and I are
Yeah.
going to be very busy because the
A lot of
buyers
them got out. A lot of
20,
agents.
20 offers on homes because the rates now dropped to acceptable level where they're willing to say, okay, let's go.
Yeah.
But you're going to have those multiple offers. And now you're going through these offers like, okay, which ones do I share with the seller that I think are the best? You're looking at 20 of them. The
I've
decision
won
maker is that agent
so
on the other
many
end.
offers that way.
Yeah.
Because I told him, listen, I would put it in my email if they didn't have time to talk. Because God bless the listing agents during that time, they would get a million phone calls because no one wants to read the freaking private remarks. Like, read the MLS before you call. But I get it. Sometimes you're at showings at the last minute, and I would dive into that. Like, I've educated this client. You know, we're not going to be asking for XYZ.
Right.
We're going to put initial deposit down. And then they just know how I do business. So I think, you know, that always helped me get some deals
Well, how many
done.
times have you been on the listing side and you get offers and no phone call from the buyer's agent?
Yeah, you're not going to call the agent before, like if you're doing
hey, did you get my offer? I want to make sure you
Not
received
only
it, right?
That, like, that goes back to the initial showing.
Yeah.
But I always call the agent prior. Hey, before I put in the offer, we're looking to put in an offer. What's really important to your seller? Is it terms? Is it price? Do they need a lease back? Again,
Right.
you know, communicate.
Right,
And I think
right.
that's how those deals get done.
But
you know?
you know, it's refreshing that you actually brought this up as your thing. I kind of bring it out in the live because I ask them, because of that whole scenario, when you got 20 offers and
you're narrowing it down.
When you're looking down and who's the agent behind the offer,
oh my
and going,
goodness,
well, I know so-and-so and I know the way they do business.
Yeah.
They're on top of their game. If they say that buyer, they've already checked financing or whatever it is,
It's very rare mine cancel. I'm not saying that I haven't had some dumpster fires, right? We're not perfect,
right.
But it's very rare. I don't want to put it together and have the buyer pay money for inspection and have a seller take their house off the market. I think about everybody. I'm super considerate. I think that might be also one of my downfalls, because I'm like uber considerate of everyone.
We covered a lot of things. We've been going about an hour and 15 minutes here.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
wow,
it's gone by fast. But what I liked the most about our conversation, and if you want to add anything on there we haven't talked about, is we let off with you brought up the NAR lawsuit and we have to show our value. You really have expressed your value. If anyone listening to this, and I'm going to send you the raw footage so you can cut reels out of it too.
Awesome.
Could really, if they're listening to it, really you've expressed your value and the extra steps that you do as an agent, and I think that's just going to be your continued success.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, I hope that there's more that I can learn and figure out what else I can add to that for the value proposition.
I think it's because you have that attitude of what can I do next? What can I do next? What can I do next?
No one's
take it to
the best ever, right? If you're evolving and this is truly your career and you're going to do this for 20 years, and hopefully I'll be retired by 20 or 30 years in. I don't know. We'll see, but
I only take family clients.
God
you got to reach that
agents.
level, right? Yeah,
I love them, and I respect that 110%. But I think that there's just you can always be better. Mm-hmm. If you're going to be that agent that thinks that you're just the best at everything, you've already lost.
I was
you need to be humble. It changes too much. The market changes. Everything evolves too much in real estate to always feel like there's nothing to learn.
I think you'll agree or have an opinion on this statement, because I see a lot of stuff on social media, and sometimes people will make comments. I'll cut a reel and it's on YouTube Shorts, and someone about the agents that have been on, and they'll make some real rash thing like, oh, they're just after your money. These people who are anti-real estate agent.
It's probably because they had a really bad agent that didn't give him any value.
Either that or that's the way they think.
That's their perspective.
They don't believe that there's someone out there.
Perspective is reality.
Yeah.
I've had people say that to me, actually. Mm-hmm. That last seller in Nocatee, it was tough. We weren't getting any showings, and we finally got sold. And she said, Caitlin, I was thinking of getting my real estate license. But seeing what you do, she's like, not only do you do real estate, you did like therapy for me. I felt like you were my therapist.
Yeah.
She's like, I had no clue what went into this, and I'm just really happy that because there was at that point a lot of sellers weren't happy with any of their agents at that time.
Yeah,
you were just in their eyes you weren't doing what you need to, and it was you had to fight through that market, but it was market conditions. It was tough, especially in those bigger price points. Anything over 600,000, but everything was pretty much sitting at that time. And I think when she said that, I don't know if I would actually go get my license now because I see what you have to put into it, and I can't thank you enough.
Right.
They relocated to Costa Rica, and they were actually in the business. Her husband was like a main guy for Follow Up Boss. Mm. So the fact that they were impressed with me, and I've had people say that, like I had an investor back in Stewart, it told me when I first got in the business, this is just about going the extra mile. He's like, I always thought real estate agents kick their feet up on the desk and wait for a phone call, but you're such a go-getter. You do so much extra work. And I think that's the difference. And I try to do that to make up for the crappy ones that are out there right now. So if you're listening, like really interview your agent and look at those reviews. And when you talk to them, see if you feel like it's a good fit, because you should be doing your research. You shouldn't just work with someone because you know them. You should work with someone because you feel like they're going to be the best fit for you and one of your biggest investments. And that's how I look at it. It's a huge investment.
Yeah. That little last 2 minutes is a reel itself, what you just came across and expressing yourself there. But, we want the quick sale. But the fact that you just came out and said, well, I actually like the long game.
The quicker the sale, the more problems, I think.
100%. Because you're not building the relationships and so forth.
Not educated
if they're taking if it's 90 or 120 days, 6 months is a long time.
It is, but
30 days, put the house on the market, and that weekend you have 20 offers and, it's closed in 4 weeks. Yeah, all of a sudden, because how many times did we have during that time? Agents told me they had people making offers on houses because they're fighting for them.
Yeah.
They got their offer accepted, and then 2 weeks into the transaction, another home goes up, and they actually like that home better, and we're canceling that one. But they jumped on that one because that was the only one available at the time, and now and that just causes angst amongst everyone.
Yeah. 2 weeks. They probably lost their binder. Most people were waiting their inspection.
Yeah.
I hope they didn't lose their binder.
I've heard some stories of from the builders holding back on some of their stuff, and in the things. I want to have some builders on the show. Actually, I want to have some sales managers, so bring them on. I don't know, just to poke at them, let them brag about their builders, because I know all the agents will get on and start telling.
Not to put them out there, but AR Homes, the client service that they give, I was so impressed. I just did a deal with them, just so impressed.
Where are they? Are they in Palm Coast?
AR Homes, Marcus Allen. They do Madeira and they do custom building.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
And then you get your spec builders, right? It just depends on which level.
Yeah.
But I think I just love the service they give. There's a lot of great builders out there. I think, again, it comes down to customer service. Don't skip steps and you'll be fine.
Right. In the long run.
Yeah.
I appreciate you coming on today.
Thank you for having me. I finally made it.
Yes.
I was like, I got to do this.
All right. I'm going to sign off. Thank you.